For those of you who did not make this morning's Chamber's mayoral breakfast, you missed an awesome breakfast. We had our 4 local mayors there, Q&A, and update on everything that's going on in St. George, Ivins, Santa Clara, and where's the other one? Washington City. And so you missed out on a great breakfast. You won't want to miss our next one, which is our forum for our Washington County Commissioners on May 15th. So put that on your calendars. It's a free breakfast, and it really gives you a lot of information on what's going on in our county. Our Spring Golf League is today, so we have another beautiful day of golf in paradise. Looking forward to that. We have another great training, luncheon next Wednesday. Our presenter is Tammy Curtis, and she's going to be teaching us resilience, the biology of stress and the science of hope. It's really going to be great. It'll be up at Dixie Technical College, so please join us. Make reservations, please. If you're a member of the Young Professionals on April 15th, 10 of you will be having lunch with Representative Lowry Snow. You must be a Young Professional member, and we only have 10 seats. It's always first come, first serve for these luncheons. Yeah, Joe, you almost fit it. You're 41, and it's 40 and under. If you're not a Young Professional member, please sign up so you can go to some of these wonderful things that we have going on. April 17th is our Community Connect Luncheon. It'll be our legislative wrap featuring our House of Representatives Snow, Last, Brook, and Segmiller, and Senators Epson and Vickers. You will not want to miss it. It's at the Dixie State University Zions Room. As most of you know, it only fits so many, so get in there and make reservations. This will definitely be by reservation only. You want to find out what happened with the legislative wrap and what that means for Southern Utah and your businesses. Join us on April 18th for our Chamber's quarterly after hours. We're going to have a blast. 6 to 9 p.m. Dixie Elks Club featuring Eric Dodge. We're going to be doing country dancing. So we'll also have a drawing, so please bring something from your business so you can get in there for the drawings, and also plenty of business cards. We're going to have a lot of fun. We'll teach line dancing, and all of you that say that you can't do it, you can. You just got to want to. Great exercise, too, for our Healthy Business Challenge. Just saying, burn a lot of calories. Our Golf Classic is May 1st. I believe we still have a couple of teams left to fill, so if you haven't signed up and you want to golf at our Golf Classic, it really is the Chamber of Commerce's only fundraiser that we do. It's a lot of fun. On that day, we'll have our luncheon, because it's on a Wednesday. Our luncheon will be there, and we'll be feeding you out there at the golf course. Bring plenty of dollars to get into putting games and all kinds of things, and come for free lunch and networking. We have a lot of other things that are going on in April, so many that I don't want to keep going on, but the pink booklets that are on your tables have the events that are upcoming. We have a huge May, too. So today we're introducing 20 new members, and to help us do that is our incoming board chairman, Fred Walker, from InfoWest. And then our very own Susie Lafayette, who is our Director of Operations and Events.
Man, I wanted one of those, Pam, like you did with Fred. Here's Susie. Oh, thank you. Thanks. Okay. Hi, everyone. If you don't know me, I'm really kind of quirky, but my flower matches the book. So if you need to look online or on the tables to follow along with our new members, please do so. These pink books. The first new member we have is Cargo Glide. Did Brad or Christina make it from Cargo Glide? Nope. Okay, they're super busy. Not climbing in and out of their trucks or vans. All right, Christian with Downtown Massage. He's here. Come on over, Christian. Do you feel tired, achy, have that spot that is always hurting, or you just don't feel 100%? Yes. Can I get an amen, Ed Tracy? Yes. Downtown Massage and Wellness is here to help you, give you a whole new experience with massage. They help their clients heal, rejuvenate, and promote overall wellness with the use of natural remedies and massage. Thank you, Christian, and welcome to the chamber. All right, get floored, floor coverings. Do we have Christian Jensen? They're building, they're out there working. All right, Tim Anderson with Curtin McConkey, right here. Curtin McConkey is Utah's largest full-service firm with 4 locations and 150 award-winning attorneys. They practice day-to-day legal counsel, practical negotiations, copyright and trademark protection, and most importantly, optimizing business growth. Curtin McConkey St. George office is comprised of 7 lawyers of the recently closed Jones Waldo St. George office and who have been active members of the St. George Area Chamber for many years. Thank you, Tim, and welcome. Tim was reminiscing with me about the days when the Chamber Luncheon used to be held up at the Rococo. For those of you who know, it's the Cliffside restaurant now, but Chamber Luncheons used to be up there way back in the day, which I'm too young to remember. All right, Darcy Burke with Cora Kids. Come on up, Darcy. Cora Kids is a nonprofit organization founded to improve the lives of those in the community of Cora, Ethiopia. They specifically target the children who lack basic necessities such as food, clean water, and clothing in order to improve their social and economic condition. Thank you, Darcy. Welcome, Cora Kids. All right, Lovin' It Ceramics. They're having too much fun playing with ceramics. Melanie Slavens. Come on up, Melanie. Yeah, come on up. Yeah. I caught her off guard. Melanie Slavens has worked as a paralegal for 12 years with experience in real estate and contracts. She has owned, built, operated, and sold many businesses over the years, but has found a true passion for real estate and investing over the last 17 years. She is currently teamed up with Utah's Best Real Estate, is RSPS certified, and looks forward to networking and continuing to build her influence in the Southern Utah real estate market. Thank you, Melanie. All right, Mr. Wise Guy. Mr. Wise Guy. Well, I know he wasn't feeling very well. Welcome, Samuel. Mr. Wise Guy is your connection to better reception. They specialize in cellular signal enhancement solutions for virtually any application, whether at home, work, or on the road. They feature the Wilson Pro line by Wilson Electronics. Their motto is live smarter, not harder, and say goodbye to dropped calls. Welcome, Samuel. Thank you. All right, did Whitney or Alan Bennett with Oh Sweet Sky make it? Oh Sweet Sky? Okay. We'll move on to Dr. Sid Young with Premier Psychological Counseling and Consulting and Premier TMS. Premier Psychological Counseling and Consulting provides counseling and consulting to those with depression, anxiety, PTSD, in addition to support services for our U.S. military veterans. They promote functional and lifestyle change, recovery and healing for children, adolescents, adults, and families. They are the first Southern Utah clinic to offer outpatient counseling and recovery for individuals who have suffered traumatic brain injuries and strokes, and I hope you'll join the chamber at their ribbon cutting and open house tomorrow at 4 o'clock. 4 at 4 p.m. Thank you, Dr. Young. All right, Doug Dahl with Red Mountain Technology. Incorporated in 2003, Red Mountain Technology has provided top-level business telephone and security solution from day one. Red Mountain just launched its own internet-based cloud phone systems, as well as released their own brand of high-definition surveillance cameras and recorders. This year, their focus has been to save businesses money on their technology infrastructure while providing the highest quality and support. Thank you, Doug, and welcome. All right, Silverleaf Wealth Advisory of Raymond James. All right, Beth Locke with Special Effects Lighting. Come on up, lightning. I don't know, they do everything else. They might bring lightning down. FX Industries is a compilation of 4 businesses. Special FX Lighting, which makes custom long-life color filters for lighting instruments, FX Powder Coating, a custom batch coating operation, Creative Metal FX, fabricating custom metal products, awnings, signs, pergolas, benches, and sconces, and Monument FX, which they will offer stone monuments, signs, plaques, awards, as well as sandblasting services. Thank you. With all that equipment. All right, Evan Christensen with Sunshield Awning Company. Evan is the new area manager for Sunshield Awning Company here in St. George. With a 17-year background in industrial contract construction, Evan brings real-world business knowledge combined with a professional attitude which resonates with clients. Sunshield Awning Company provides patio covers, carports, gazebos, shade panels, and window awnings, and much more. So if you're looking to shade this summer, give Evan a call. Thank you, Evan. All right, Tiffany Rose with Tiffany's. She's probably experiencing a lunch rush with her creperies. All right, Carrie Jones with Utah Disaster Cleanup. For 45 years, Utah Disaster Cleanup has been the name for trust for water, fire, and mold cleanup and restoration services for residential homes and commercial buildings. For more information about UDK, visit them online and be sure to read their Google reviews. Thank you, Carrie. And Rosie Chero with Work Turf, did she make it? Oh, okay.
Thank you, Fred and Susie, and welcome to all of our new members. This is really great. We've got such a great family here. So, without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce our keynote today, whose resume is absolutely extraordinary. He's a lifelong resident of St. George, a graduate of Dixie State College, Brigham Young University, Golden Gate University, and the University of Utah. He is a member of the Utah State Bar, as well as a member of the State Bar's Business Law and Probate Trust Law sections. He was elected the Washington County Attorney in 1970 and served 1 term. He also served as the Director of Economic Development for the state of Utah from 1991 to 1993. He has maintained a private law practice in St. George with his emphasis in business and estate planning. He is the founder of SkyWest Airlines, Cafe Rio, and the beautiful Red Hills Golf Course, my favorite. And they're building a new building out there, which is really, really going to enhance it, and it's just beautiful. He created Airlines in Austria and West Africa. He's a member of the National Advisory Council for Dixie State University. He and his wife have been co-chairs of the Centennial Campaign Committee. He also served on the board of True Hearing, Inc., a private company. He recently taught an entrepreneurial business class at Dixie State University. He is married to Sherry Bennett Atkin. They have 8 children and 25 grandchildren. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Ralph Atkin.
Well, thank you very much. This is on, right? You can hear me? Well, let me begin by doing a little fact-checking here. I was given credit just now as being one of the founders or creator of the Dixie Red Hills Golf Course. That was actually done while I was on my mission by my brothers, who are much older than I, but wonderful individuals. And I have to tell you the story about that Red Hills Golf Course, and my brother Sid, who was in the legislature, and Sid and Lee had gone to a place called Butte, Montana, after high school to work for a year, and our uncle was a member of a country club. And so they got to play golf. He could put these boys in the golf program for $4 a month. And so they learned to play golf in Butte, Montana. We had no golf courses in St. George. So in any event, they come back, and Sid gets involved with the chamber. He gets involved with the legislature and a bunch of other things. And Sid was just a goer. He was kind of the brains behind the Red Hills Golf Course. Well, one of the big arguments about golf courses those days was water, and ranchers and farmers wanted to keep the water away from people who just want to hit a little white ball around. So, in any event, my oldest brother, Clayton Atkin, happened to be on the city council of St. George when they did the Red Hill Golf Course. Well, he was asked to give introductory remarks as they did the dedication of the golf course. And Clayton stood up, the rancher, and said, I really know nothing about golf. My brothers, Sid and Lee, they know much more about it. In fact, he says, I don't even know which end of the caddy to hold. So anyway, that was his remarks to the city at that time. We trace our roots in this community back to the very first wagon that came into the valley in St. George in 1861 with William Fawcett, my great-great-grandfather. And his hatchet that was used in carving the stone on the tabernacle is in display at the tabernacle today. So my great-great-grandfather was involved in that. My great-grandfather, who was William Atkin, was also involved. And so we have a pretty good history of being involved in community service here in this community right from the very beginning. When the Saints first came here, there was a guy by the name of David H. Cannon, and he had a wife who, when she came into this valley, looked around and said, what in the world have we got ourselves into? Because there was nothing here. And she told her husband, if you don't find me something that's beautiful, I'm leaving, I'm going home. And he went out and spent a day or two or three and finally found a sago lily. And he brought the sago lily back to Willie and said, isn't this beautiful? And she looked at it and she says, why, yes, it is beautiful. Well, will you stay? Yes, I will. As we all move into St. George, I think we all have to find our sago lily. So what is it that keeps us here, brings us here, that drives into our heart that we love this place? So I hope that each of you are finding, and I'm sure you have, the Chamber of Commerce does a pretty good job of making sure that we do find our own sago lilies. Well, let me fast forward from the days that my great-grandparents were here to June 4th of 1943, which is the day I arrived here. In that period of time, almost 70 years, can you imagine that the chamber wasn't really active? The growth wasn't really anything to be shouted about. I'm going to give you some statistics in a few minutes, but it had a population of 4,000 in the county. And it had been that way literally for about 70 years. So, and I can't take full credit that it was just me coming here that started this, but in any event, the growth began to go a little. When I was in the 8th grade in Woodward, and we had people from Santa Clara and from Washington coming to the junior high, Woodward Junior High, I can remember sitting down and naming every family in St. George, Washington, and Santa Clara. I knew them all. I was in the 8th grade. I knew the world that I lived in. Things, they have changed. I remember, our stake president and the LDS faith at that time was that the LDS church was from Bundyville on the south to Pine Valley on the north to Washington and Santa Clara. All these little communities, all under one stake president. Now we have 31 stakes, and even more exciting is we have a community of faith communities of maybe 40 or 50 in this area. Jimmy, you would know the number better than I, but it's a large number of other faiths and denominations that are here and are active and vibrant and good. And this community has become a better community because of that. When I was growing up in St. George, I literally lived downtown. I could walk to school. I could walk to the movies. We only had 2. I could walk to the ballpark, the swimming pool, the church, Mathis Market, the rodeo grounds, Graham Atkin's house. Any place of importance, I could walk to it. In my world at that time, I could walk to it. Now, Christmas time came, and Mom and Dad bought us, me and my brother Bruce, bought us bikes. Holy Toledo. We could ride those bikes clear past Main Street on over to the Black Hill. I mean, we could get around, and our world began to expand as we saw, opportunities. Brooks Pace lived clear on the other side of town, and I could find him and the Carter boys and Doc Booth. Well, I shouldn't talk about that, but we'll get to him later when we can appropriately take care of that. So anyway, my life was pretty interesting. Grew up in these the high schools, the junior high and the high school, and then I was elected the senior class president. Are any of you here the senior class president of your high school? Because if you aren't, you're blessed. Because if you are, you're cursed. Because it's a lifetime calling. 55 years since we graduated, and who's still doing the reunions? The senior class president. Boy, talk to your kids, steer them away from that. Get them on some other committee, but my gosh, that's one that doesn't quit. But we had a principal of our junior high, Woodward, Newell R. Fry. Some of you will remember Newell R. Fry. He was a great golfer. That's all he wanted to do after he retired from teaching and being what we call those guys that are the judges, the little, the justice of the peace. That's what he was. And we had some fun time with Newell as the justice of the peace. He had a tendency to create laws and when I was county attorney, I have to say, now, Newell, you can't give a person for a ticket for aggravated parking. There is no, so anyway. But Newell said something really bright. He said, don't let your education interfere with your learning. And that was the advice to his junior high school class people. Don't let your education interfere with your learning. He knew that life's lessons, when we get out into life, we've got a lot of things to learn, and it's not all going to be in textbooks. And so I've always appreciated what he had to say. I got my first job when I was 12 years old at the Big Hand Cafe. Some of you will remember it as the Filthy Fist Cafe, but it was the Big Hand Cafe on the corner of Main Street and First North. and that's where the Greyhound bus would come in. I was a dishwasher, and you'd hear one of the waitresses would holler, "Bus in!" Oh man, those are frightening words. And I remember looking out there one time and seeing 14 buses lined up around the corner. That's more than a 12-year-old can handle, I tell you. So, Big Hand Cafe did something interesting. It produced an information sheet about St. George. And they did this in about 1950, 51, 52. And one of the things that it highlighted was that the restaurant, the Big Hand Cafe, was 5 blocks north and 1 block west of the St. George Temple that was built in 1877. It took 6 years to construct that. This is in their advertising piece. It said that the population was 4,545 at an elevation of 2,700. It explains how the area got its Dixie name from cotton and so on, what have you. Told how hot it was here, but countered that we have now swamp coolers, so you're pretty well off in Utah's Dixie when it gets 110 with your swamp cooler. Wrong. I've been there. It's horrible. But you can go 1 hour drive north to Pine Valley or Oak Grove and get out of the heat. And you do that, you drive by 2 of the most beautiful volcanoes in the world. This is the advertising that they're giving. The Hurricane Fault, it's the largest exposed fault in the world, so they said. And this place have a swimming pool, a ballpark, 2 modern motion picture theaters. It identifies the 4 major industries of the area. And I'll guarantee there's not, maybe one person here that could name all 4. And I'm certain you cannot name the first one. That's a good guess, but it's not there. The number 1 industry, cotton, that's a good guess too. But you know, you had sheep, cattle, and agriculture. But did you know that we were really, really, really big? I mean, you can ask Bill Barlocker this if you know that name. Turkeys was the big industry. And if you didn't like it, I mean, get this, turkey hens began laying in January. That's in the ad. That's in the advertisement that they're putting out to the world. So it was pretty interesting. Okay, now going on. In about 1960, when I was in my senior year at high school, I don't know who put this together, but in any event, one of the great epic basketball events took place in St. George. And that is that Rudger Atkin's family, who had 5 boys and a girl who had married, so he had a stepson or son-in-law, and Claire Hafen from Santa Clara had 5 boys, a daughter, so I had a son-in-law. So we had 2 basketball teams. And somebody put us together, and we ended up with a big knockdown, drag-out fight on the basketball court in the newly completed 5th and 6th Ward Chapel, which is known as the Flood Street Chapel. And we duked it out, the Atkins against the Hafens, or the Cowboys against the Farmers. The only problem with that, we were doing pretty good until they brought Jimmy Fredette in, or Zion Williams, other words known as Arland Hafen. For those of you who knows the names around here, Arland was an All-American basketball player, outside shooter. So in any event, it was still a good game. We had our pride when we left, even though we were defeated. It was unique. having to admit that the Farmers beat the Cowboys was the hard thing to get over the years. But in any event, it happened, and some of these people are still alive that was on that team, on the Hafen and the Atkins. Upon graduating from high school on June the 4th of 1961, we had a graduating class of 60 boys. And 61, if you can think back a little bit, Vietnam War hadn't started, but they had things going on in Vietnam and other places in the world. In our graduating class of 60 boys, 30 of us joined the National Guard and went in the service. In the summer, the day after graduation from high school, the Army sent a bus to St. George, going through Cedar City, picked up 4 Cedar City students, and then came to St. George and picked up another 30. We got on that bus. There was 4 guys from Cedar City, and they were kind of like back to back, ready to take on these Dixie boys. It was a scary thing for them, I know. And we got on that bus and drove to Southern California. By the time we got to Southern California, we actually learned the names of those 4 guys. We wanted to know where they lived and their names and address and so on. But in any event, it wasn't very long when we got into Fort Ord, California, and we got off the bus in the middle of the night, and there's fog, and it was a whole other different world. We're just coming from St. George to Cedar City. We'd never experienced this kind of a world. So we get off the bus, and there's 300 people there from places all over the United States. Well, it didn't take long for Southern Utah guys to stick together, and that included the 4 guys from Cedar City. We were from Southern Utah. It wasn't St. George versus Cedar City at all. It's us against the world, and that was St. George and Cedar City. So it's interesting that our eyes begin to open up a little wider, more than just riding that bicycle clear past Main Street. You're now in Fort Ord, California. We're just up the road is Watsonville, the world capital of the artichoke capital of the world, it's called. I didn't know that before I went down there. We've got places like Pebble Beach, Carmel, San Francisco. Us Utah boys from Southern Utah were seeing these places. Our eyes were being opened. It was amazing. I spent 12 years in the Utah National Guard. Most of the guys got out after 6 years, but we stayed in, went to OCS, and became commissioned, because the pay was better. And I was trying to go to school. And that time in the National Guard, that additional 6 years, really made a difference. So now we're back to where we're looking at the 4 big M's: the military, the mission, a major in college, and marriage. And then here we are off to University of Utah, BYU, Golden Gate, then back to St. George in 1970. And about that time, in about 1970 or 71 or 72, the Chamber of Commerce gets organized under Art Anderson. And I'm in Art Anderson's office, as his son just reminded me, and that was the first time I met Tim, was in the chamber office in St. George, in the old building there, the old courthouse. And Art really put a fire in the St. George Chamber of Commerce. And I think that he's one of the great successes for this, particularly this organization and this community, was Art Anderson. while Sherry and I was going to BYU, we graduated from here at 65. So we're up there in about 1966. We rented a little apartment and we had a carport, or core part, depending on where you're from. We had this little carport and we rented it out so these two business guys could put a trailer on it and do a little business out of there. It was a collection agency, and they hired me to help with their collection. Well, these guys were little new entrepreneurs in 1966, and they said, well, you're from St. George? I said, yeah. He says, would that be a good place to buy property? I said, I think it'd be an excellent time right now. They said, well, we'll go down and check it out. 2 weeks later, I saw them, and I said, did you get to St. George? And they said, yeah, we did. I said, what do you think about the property values down there now? This is 1966. Anybody here like to buy property in 1966? Well, these two geniuses said we're 5 years too late. Can you imagine that? We're just 5 years too late. Oh, Len. I was getting real estate values at $100 an acre at that time. Oh, around here. Well, the development of this community, I'll make sure on my time. Oh, we've still got a minute or two, don't we? The development of this community is kind of divided into two pieces. BB and AB. Before Bloomington and after Bloomington. Now that's an actual fact. The development of this county goes back to Bloomington. And you had guys come down here from Salt Lake City, Utah, like Ellis Ivory, Roger Boyer. Did you know that they spent time here? They learned how to do their trade here before they went up and really made their money. The Entz boys stayed here. And the real estate business began to boom. But it come with the Bloomington event. We had some young guys who came from, anybody here know the name of Jeff Morby? Jeff Morby was hired out of Ogden, Utah. He was a shoe salesman. And Jim Kimball brought him down to St. George to help the management of Bloomington. Jeff Morby married a MacArthur girl. You don't get deeper into this community than you do with the MacArthurs. They had 5 kids, all married, local families. All of their grandkids are in St. George. This is a transplant from Ogden. Well, we've got other transplants from Ogden that we won't talk about, Greg. In any event, let me tell you that we came home from law school, got here in 70, and in 71, we're thinking about doing some other things. And while I was in law school, I subscribed to 2 magazines. One was golf, and one was flying. When we come back here, my wife got a job at Dixie College, Dixie Junior College, that she and I both graduated from. And she now was making money. I had this job as county attorney that didn't pay any money, but it gave me an opportunity to develop a private practice and so on. So anyway, we had this discussion about, she said we couldn't afford the 2 magazines. Get rid of one or the other, I don't care which, but get rid of one of them. So I got rid of Flying Magazine, bought a new set of golf clubs, joined the BCC, the Bloomington Country Club, and began golfing. About a year later, a Dixie College student come into my office with a whiplash injury, seeing if I could give him legal assistance. I said, certainly. I've been out of law school a year. I could handle anything. So in any event, we get talking. I find out that he is the flight instructor at the local flying club, which is associated with Dixie College. And he says, come fly with me. I said, I can't do that. I've told my wife I'm going to golf. I'm giving up flying. The problem is I first graduated from BYU, and I had values pretty well set. But then I went to University of Utah Law School. and so when he said, hey, I'll go golfing with you, and you go flying with me, and your wife will never know. And I thought, man, that sounds good. So I went flying with him. After I'd got about 6 hours of flight time in, about ready to solo, I probably ought to tell my wife what I'm doing, because, she shouldn't have to read about it in the paper. Stupid guy crashes his airplane. So anyway, we went ahead and finished our flight, and I got my pilot's license. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that, because that led obviously to some other things. My first big legal case here in St. George had to do with our friend, with some Dr. Booth, Craig Booth. How many of you here know Craig Booth? Oh, good. All right, well, here's the story on Craig Booth. He had gone through medical school on a deferment with the government, and they helped pay for his way. But when he got through, he had what is known as an obligation to the service. And he had like a 4-year, maybe it was longer, I don't know. But my law partner at that time was Tony Allen, who's in the community, and he and I were at the Brandy and Iron in Pine Valley and eating, and lo and behold, here comes Dr. Fossen, and Dr. Staley comes in and says, hey, boys, you guys are just out of law school and can do anything? Sure can, that's us. We got a situation. Craig Booth wants to come back and practice medicine, but he's got an obligation. How do we get him out of the service? Oh, we'll take care of that. Try that on for size. Gee whiz. We had at that time 5 or 6 doctors in this area, 5 or 6. And a couple of them were getting ready to retire. Dr. Reichman, who was my doctor, was ready to give it up. There was the McGregors, some of those were getting a little bit old. So in any event, we took this case on, and we filed a lawsuit against the Secretary of the Army, I think maybe the President of the United States, certainly the governor, the Adjutant General for the state of Utah, anybody that had any kind of signature by his name that looked like military, we sued them all. And in federal district court in Salt Lake City. Never been there before. But in any event, we did it. And but as it turned out, the attorney representing the federal government was a fellow that I had met and knew. He was actually the stake president of a stake that my wife's sister lived in Salt Lake. And so we knew each other. And the other guy who represented the state of Utah military side, I knew him in OCS at the Officer Candidate School at Camp Williams. And so we ended up having a sit-down, can we work this thing out program. And they were pretty tough on me. And we begged and pleaded and said, look, we've got this, there's an opportunity through what was known as a community hardship. At that time, we only had 5 or 6 doctors in this community. But under a community hardship exemption, there was an opportunity that maybe we could get another doctor here. And they resisted it. Then they come back and said, okay, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll give him a 4F because we don't want to set precedents. We'll give him a 4F and you can do whatever you want to with him. And I apologize to you who know Craig Booth, because I'm responsible for bringing him here. But in any event, he has been a godsend to this community, to the medical community especially. And so we got him out, but he's a 4F. You know, he doesn't like to say that, but he was 4F'd. All right. So the next big deal, I had a client that was, you know, all that property north of Washington that's known as Buena Vista. It was all just pure blank land. My client wanted to buy it. This is a guy by the name of Frank Sullivan. And he went to the owner and actually took him in a car and they drove up on the property, and Frank had a attaché case full of $100 bills, about $100,000 or more. Took him up there in his brand new Cadillac, showing this dirt farmer this land, see if he could buy it from him. And the guy, they getting pretty close, and finally this guy just kept looking at Frank's Cadillac. And Frank says, I'll tell you what, you can have all the money in that bag and you can have the car as well. Deal. So, big deal. Now, the problem was, from a legal standpoint, there was more problems on that land, boundary disputes, and that's what I was brought into the deal for, was to fix the boundary disputes. Well, Frank he paid that guy cash, but he didn't like to pay cash to lawyers. But anyway, I worked a deal with him. You give me land, and away from your land, because I don't want to develop it with you, but give me land, and maybe I can do something with it. He gave me a 15-acre piece of land, which is, if you're familiar with the golf course, it's on the west side of the course in Green Springs, number 7, 8, and there's quite a bit of extra land right there. That was my land, and I took that and I eventually sold it to the people who developed Green Spring Golf Course. And with that money, I had this crazy idea from that time that I've been reading those books on flying to start an airline. And so with that $50,000, we started an airline, bought the operating certificates, and bought a couple little airplanes on credit mostly, and we started SkyWest Airlines. Now, we had a flying club with 5 of us that would all put $500 in. And then when the opportunity came to really get, into the airline business, I went back to my partners and said, okay, everybody needs to pony up for $2,500. I'm out, I'm out, I'm out, I'm out. So Sherry and I just sat there by ourselves. We were the only ones still in. So we ended up being the sole founders of SkyWest Airlines in those days. And that has been a tremendous ride for us and the community. What was it that drove us on the SkyWest was 2 things. One is to develop jobs for people locally. How are we doing on time? 10 minutes, okay. All right. So we developed the airline, and these folks stepped out of it, which was just fine. And this has been just a tremendous opportunity for us. But there's 2 things. One is that we wanted to give people an opportunity for employment. And number 2 is that we believe that the business community needed to have a quicker way to get to the hub city in Salt Lake rather than driving 5 hours. And so it used to be 8 hours, then it got down to 5. By flying, it's now down to 45 minutes to 50. So SkyWest comes into being. During this whole time, my wife and I have had a continuing appreciation and love affair with Dixie State University. And we had a member of our board of directors at SkyWest who had just come into a lot of money and nobody knew who he was except Greg Kemp. But we got Stephen Udvarhazy to consider giving a gift to Dixie State University. And so the Hazy Business Building is the result of that request. Jerry Atkin and I had come to the understanding that, you'd be surprised what you can get by just asking. And I asked Steve Udvarhazy, come on over to Dixie State and take a look and see if you can help. Using that same philosophy, a man by the name of Lindsay Atwood, who's new to the community, is on the board of directors here, or board of trustees at Dixie State. A good friend, I was on his board of directors, and I brought him down here, and he likes to think I really sunk the hook deep on him, and actually a lot deeper than we thought, but he's been very, very helpful to Dixie State, and the new Atwood Innovation Plaza is a result of that simple ask. Hardly have time to talk about Cafe Rio, but we had some investor friends and I had a client, goes back to this Frank Sullivan, his daughters and her husband had an idea about a Mexican restaurant. So we tested it out at my son's wedding on May the 5th of 1960, 70, 90, 90, what was it? Holy, 90, 97, September 97. Thank you very much. So we have this wedding in our backyard, and we're serving Mexican food that hadn't, including dessert, the whole thing. We couldn't get people to leave our yard. They just kept coming back for more food. And we finally said, maybe people like this food. So in any event, that was the beginning of Cafe Rio. How are we doing? Still 5 more minutes? 7? Oh, good. Okay. So, Dixie State University. Let me just talk about that for just a minute, because I can get emotional about Dixie State, because it is such an important part of our community. In the press in the last few weeks, we've had a lot of really negative stuff about higher education. And parents going to the extent of paying $500,000 to get people to cheat for their kids to get them into school. Dixie State University has always been on the front of high integrity. And I without my wife words, but we are aware of a situation in which an opportunity came to Dixie State that big money could have been given to them. But there were strings attached to that were improper. And Dixie State and the president of Dixie State said no. When all this happened a couple of weeks ago, I called that president and said, I just want to tell you how proud I am of you and Dixie State University for putting integrity above greed. And I think this university does that. It puts integrity above greed. So we've been involved in a number of things at Dixie State. Not only buildings that are here now, but I don't know if you've been around the campus and seen the memory gardens that are outdoor classrooms, the bell tower, the Holland building. Many of these things are things not that we have done, but we have had the privilege of participating. And Representative Last and Franklin Oko, these guys have been the ones that are really doing the hard work and getting new buildings on this campus that, boy, when we talk about Division I, we're coming in big time. And we're proud to be at least donors to D1, putting our money where our mouth is and saying we want D1 here. And we are Division I, and we'll be very, very shortly playing those Division I schools. Well, in closing, a number of things that I could talk about, but the one thing that I hope you get an idea on here is how important service is. Service to your community, service to your God, service to your neighbors and your friends. SkyWest Airlines, it wasn't that we expected to make money. It was that we really believed the community needed it. And my wife says we have the responsibility to plant or bloom where we're planted. Give meaningful service is another motto that we've talked about. You can have anything you want in this world if you'll help enough other people get what they want. And everything is possible if you don't care who gets the credit. And that one little piece there has killed more deals because people care who gets the credit. But if you don't care who gets the credit, it's endless, the wonderful things we can do in this community. Thank you for allowing me to come here. If we had more time, I'd be happy to talk about my 8 kids and 25 grandkids, but that might be a little bit overdoing it. Thank you very much.
That's the gift for you.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a little something for you to take with you. That's just a little piece of art.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. It's on a
Oh,
little
that's
holder.
beautiful.
Isn't that pretty?
That's current.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll give that to you, too.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you again. That was really awesome. Thank you to the Courtyard by Marriott for hosting us today and for our community education channel. You can watch it on youtube.com/community education channel. Share it with your friends. Thank you so much for coming out today. Thank you again, Mr. Atkins, for everything. This was awesome. Hope to see you next Wednesday at Dixie Tech. Have a great day.